Number 9 for me, and this might get me a lot of hate with it being so low on the list, is Avengers Infinity War. Again, we go back to pacing. That was a slower paced film that I was just like, but it was really good. It was really enjoyable. But at the same time, I think I've only watched it maybe 1 or 2 times in general. I've watched Endgame like at least 5 or 6 times, but I think I've only watched Infinity War like 1 or 2 times. I'm just not the biggest fan. I understand filmmakers' like decisions and how you go with the storyline. I'm not the biggest fan of leaving things like that unresolved the way that one was left unresolved, because we're so used to this formula, which the good guy always wins. So with this one coming out, I was like, oh my God. So I think that's probably why I put it so low on my list. It's still like one of my favorites and one of the best ones of all time, but I know that one is some people's number 1. So, I mean, yeah, send the hate mail. Number 9 for me, Avengers Infinity War. Yeah.
All right. My number 9 is the original Guardians of the Galaxy. I had to be in my top 10 because this was one of those, if it works, it's going to work. And if it doesn't, could have definitively put a huge strike in the MCU and maybe killed the MCU.
Yeah.
But this was an attempt to say, because Iron Man, unless you were a comic book fan, was a lesser known character, right?
Yeah.
But still, he was a cool superhero. To take a group that, unless you were a comic book fan, you had no fucking idea who they were, and you're talking about a talking raccoon and a talking tree and like this weird shit. That's a huge risk, right? And then to say that the opening movie's not going to even tell you who these people are, we're just going to jump right in. And for Gunn to be able to do it and the way that he did it, it was incredible. And it cemented the fact that Marvel could basically take anybody from their stable of characters, the most recluse, unknown, minuscule characters that nobody has ever heard of, and turn them into a massive blockbuster. This movie did it, and showed that why they are what they are, why the MCU is so successful. So kudos to them. Had to be in the top 10. Had to be. I'm just saying he could probably take Squirrel Girl and make it work. I'm just saying it's that kind of Marvel. Just works. Yeah. Even their weird ass characters just work.
Yeah. So this is the next one for me at number 8. The number 8 spot is very controversial, and I think again we differ about 9 spots, I believe. So number 8 for me is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I just really freaking enjoyed it. Guardians, like Rocket is my favorite Guardian, so that's probably why it ranks so high up on the list. And like with the emotional factor of his backstory and with his first ever words where it hurt, like it was tear jerking, man. And it is such a breath of fresh air to have this one come out in a time where I feel like Marvel is not at its peak anymore, or at least at the moment. So it was so refreshing to see Marvel being Marvel again. So that was really enjoyable. But yeah, I really enjoyed it all the way through. I really enjoyed the villain. I felt like he was at, Kang the Conqueror level, like the way the actor portrayed the villain. And yeah, I just felt like it was a good send-off of, like we said, those characters and how that all played out. So, yeah, number 8 for me, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
I love it. My number 8, Spider-Man Homecoming. I could not love this movie more. I think it was absolutely brilliant. This is the definitive way to introduce a character without an origin story. Mm-hmm. Like, it showed it just was not necessary. I thought it was just in my opinion, it was a great setup with the mentorship between Tony and Peter. And where Peter's thought process was coming, Peter trying to figure it out, right? That am I a superhero? Am I not? Or what he thinks a superhero is, and being starkly reminded what it is not. And just the teenager trying to figure it all out. And I think they got it all right. I think they just did a great job of finally giving us Spider-Man. As awesome as the first Spider-Man was with Tobey Maguire, there were some things like the weird web that without the web slinger, and like there was just some stuff that was. This was definitively Spider-Man. And it was right from start to finish. And so it's hard to not have it in there in the top 10 because it's like, thank you. Hence Homecoming. You brought him home and you got him right. Yeah. And it was just like, it was amazing.
Yeah, it is very difficult not to have that one. Like I said, it's on the borderline, man. It's on the borderline. Number 7 for me goes to Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, like you talked about. I mean, this was by far the best new character that they introduced. I just felt like everything was so genuine about his character, the love and passion he has for the people around him, and the overall fight sequences I felt like were just absolutely amazing. I mean, the bus sequence when he's fighting off the goons and then bringing out that dragon, man, from like not only the big baddie dragon that was hidden behind the wall or whatever, but the dragon that was the savior and was the good one that helped them conquer the other one. I just felt like everything about this movie was so family oriented and wholesome, and just to be able to, bring that type of diversity with the Asian community into the MCU, I felt like was a very special experience. And I'm so excited to see what his character leads into with the dude from Doctor Strange. Like, I'm so excited. So that, like I said before, one of my favorite new characters and one of my favorite characters of all time now. But yeah, Shang-Chi at number 7.
And how they very, very shadily, but very brilliantly introduced us to the realm of Iron Fist.
Yeah, they did.
And how Iron Fist is going. Because remember, guys, there's more than one dragon or two dragons. There's a whole bunch. And Iron Fist guards one. And so how they were able to sneak that in there, and how there's Spider-Man Far From Home or No Way Home set up Daredevil, kind of introduced. Shang-Chi set up Luke, Iron Fist. And so I like how we're getting there, bringing that stuff in. I thought that was just brilliant. Speaking of
brilliant,
my number 7, Spider-Man Far From Home. The reason this one is above No Way Home, Far From Home is, in my opinion, first of all, they took the goofiest ass fucking villain, Mysterio, with his glass fucking dome and basically a failed magician type guy, and made him a badass and made him kind of cool. And I thought the dynamic between Gyllenhaal and Holland was really outstanding, and just, but it's the introduction of the multiverse. Yeah. Wait a minute. There's more than one universe? What the fuck is going on? What do you mean? And kind of the way they did that, I thought it was a brilliant way to introduce it into it, right? Just enough to get you going, what? But not enough to give it away yet, right? And then the other thing for me is what I was just basically talking about with the first Spider-Man movie, about him and what it is to be a superhero and what it is not and everything, is this movie, Far From Home, when he thinks he has it all figured out and he's taken the mentorship from Tony and he's got it, and people are kind of thinking Spider-Man's cool and this is a great guy, fucks it all up. Yeah. He's like, once you think you got it, you don't. And that's the other bad thing about being a superhero, that it doesn't always work out the way you want it to, and it's not always going to be the way you want it to be, and you're going to get people hurt, and you're going to have to keep that kind of. And I thought this movie, again, the evolution of Peter and him being Spider-Man and what that means, I thought was done extremely well in this movie. So that's why that's my number right there.
For sure.
I just think I love the evolution of Spider-Man.
Yeah. This next one, you're going to be a little offended it's not in my top 5. I'm just preparing you now. Number 6 for me goes to the original Iron Man, the one that kicks us all off. You can't
even have this list without it. This list literally doesn't exist without it.
I know. Okay, I get it. I get where you're coming from. I understand. But I don't know. Something about origin stories. That's really the only thing. It's just something about origin stories. But other than that, everything's so amazing. That's why it's so high on the list. Of course, it's literally. This shows my age a little bit, not to hurt your feelings, but it was literally the first film I ever saw in the movie theaters by myself. I was so freaking impressed, and like it made me feel some type of way. Like when I was walking out and the ending credits ends with Black Sabbath's Iron Man, like it gets you it gets you pumped up. It's so motivating and it's so cool, and how they ended it with I am Iron Man. Like, yeah, fuck that shit. Don't hide that. Like, it's so awesome. Like, I just love everything about it. So, yeah, that's why it's number 6 on my list. But I get it. It's not in the top 5. And a lot of people are going to hate me for it. But, oh well.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
No words.
Yeah. So maybe you'll be mad at me for this one, for not being in the top 5.
Disappointed,
but number 6 for me is Black Panther, the original Black Panther. Could have it been in my top 5? Maybe. I think so. But it definitely, it's right there. It's right there.
Yeah.
And the reason it's right there is, one, the brilliant performances by everybody in the film. The brilliant direction by Ryan Coogler. The brilliant costume design. The brilliant production design. Everything about this movie was stellar. And anytime you get a film that so deeply ingrains itself into pop culture, where years later you have people Wakanda forever, and what that movement meant for not just the African American community, but for fucking Africa itself, and that heritage and that history. On top of the superhero aspect of it all, and the technology, the worlds of technology and old school meeting and like all this. I just think this is the first time anything had ever been broadly done on screen like that since the original Superman, with the Crystal Fortress of Solitude and the emergence of technology and alien type stuff with old school heritage of, like, I think it was the first time that I had seen it done in a superhero movie successfully on film since then.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. And it says, you can come from the jungles of Africa and have this high-end technology, and you can have this heritage but still be new school, and just everything worked. Everything worked. And it worked because of Coogler and Chadwick Boseman, and it was a brilliant movie, and I can't imagine the MCU without it, and so that's why it's my number 6. I know maybe could have been in the top 5, but it's right there. It's right there.
It's right there, man. It's right there. Now we've made it. We have made it to our top 5 Marvel MCU movies of all time. This one is very difficult. It was very hard. Number 5 for me is Avengers Endgame. Honestly, it was my favorite for so long, by far. But I'm going back and rewatching a lot of them over the past couple years, and just thinking about the overall impact it had for not only me, but the cinematic universe in general. It was hard to put movies above those, but I still came out with 4 above it. But Avengers Endgame is honestly, I think, one of the best movies of all time. I think it's so damn good, obviously, with the amount of money it made at the box office overall. Like, it's an amazing film that I don't care it's 3 hours long. I will put that on if I have nothing else to do and just literally watch it. It is so damn entertaining. And of course, I mean, the last fight sequence, I think that's that's the best fight sequence we've ever seen for any sort of either action movies, cinematic, or hero movie, or anything like that. That last hour, 45 minutes is just absolutely amazing. I start crying when that motherfucker picks up the hammer, okay? Like, it's honestly the first time I had ever seen or heard or been a part of a crowd erupting, and it was a spectacle that I don't think you can ever recreate. So that's why number 5 for me is Avengers Endgame.
All right, my number 5, and I agree with a lot of what you just said, which is, I'll get to it in a minute. But my number 5 is Iron Man, and because you can't have any of this without Iron Man,
Yes.
I thought, and thankfully, because we've been seeing a lot of communication with the stories here, even from Favreau, which I was totally confused about because Favreau has well documented in the past this. But the original president of Marvel Studios, which you may or may not have known was not Kevin Feige, came out and clarified it, and I'm glad that he did. They went to war to get Robert Downey Jr. At that time, when they made Iron Man, it was not a Marvel Studios picture. It was a Paramount picture, and Paramount did not want Robert Downey Jr. They wanted Tom Cruise, and when they didn't get Tom Cruise, they had other people in mind. They were like, no way, shape, or form are we taking a chance on a has-been actor who's got a drug problem and an alcohol problem. And Favreau said, he is fucking Tony Stark. Tony Stark has an alcohol problem. He has drug problems. He has a Playboy syndrome kind of. He literally is the character and went to bat for it and refused to go anywhere else. And so the first president said, I'm going to go to bat for it. I stand by Favreau. This is your guy. And if you don't do this guy, we're making a huge mistake. They finally convinced Ike back then, like who now thankfully is the fuck out of there. But they finally convinced him and they went with it. And the rest is history. This guy was a flawed character, a flawed man playing a flawed character who rose above it to become the man that he was meant to be. He's the literal definition of Tony Stark. Yeah. A real life and superhero. He's a real life superhero in what he has overcome because of Iron Man and now where he is in his life because of this movie. And so how can you not have that? It's like the epitome of a winning story all the way around. Let's take a chance on a guy that needs redemption and hope that the redemption leads to something greater. And that's exactly what it's done. It led to something greater, not only for the MCU, but for him himself and for all those who followed in his footsteps trying to make a comeback, trying to say, I made a mistake, but I can come back. That's for me what Iron Man stands for. I take it out of just the movie and I take what was the story of Iron Man? What does it stand for? It's the ultimate story of a man who made mistakes that redeems himself to become the hero. And for me, I mean, it was a given. It had to be there in the top 5. Yeah. Had to be.
I understand. Number 4 for me goes to the original Avengers. This one, it makes me like, this is one of the best movies I feel like in the MCU, obviously. But just the feeling that I get after watching it, just the amount of like, you can see that they have this thing planned out so far and they have so many different ideas from this film that you can see that it's going to be something that is very, very instrumental in the entertainment industry for the foreseeable future, which it continues to be. So I feel like the amount of setup they did for the original Avengers movie was just so damn good. And it was such an amazing thing to see them all come together. And that first time where you see them all together on the ship and talking to each other and giving each other shit, it's just such an amazing thing. And like, that what you were just talking about when Cap's like, what are you without your armor? Well, Playboy, philanthropist, like all this different shit. Like, it's just such a good banter back and forth. And you see Hulk go crazy. Like we said, Mark Ruffalo, first appearance and that whole dynamic. So something special about the first Avengers movie. That's why I put it in my top 5. So number 4 for me, the Avengers.
Like I said, I thought they did a really good job with Ruffalo carrying on. What I liked about the Incredible Hulk was that when you hear Cap say Hulk, smash, and he smiles like, fuck yeah, that's what Hulk does. I fucking smash shit. Like, I loved that. Everything about that movie was fantastic. I agree with you. My number 4, Avengers Infinity War. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I put this near the top of my list because everybody was wondering with the original Avengers, how can you top that? How can you culminate that, right? Yeah. Well, we can take all these fucking characters and put them into a fucking movie and still make it better than what the original Avengers was when you're like, holy shit, they're putting 5 people? Now how about 50 fucking people in a movie? So on the level that it did. But what I really liked about Avengers Infinity War was the first time that we see and you get a glimpse of what's coming, sacrifice. There are consequences and there are things that realism of this is the world and shit doesn't always end well. And Infinity Wars, when it first started to set it up, like there you were drawn to this movie because you were invested in these characters, and oh shit, characters that you were invested in fucking died.
Yeah, literally.
What? Like, I mean, I remember seeing that movie in the theater and the people, like literal tears as if they were at a family member's fucking funeral when Peter died.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, to bring that type of emotion and that type of investment to a character in a story, in a film, is what I think every filmmaker dies for. Like that's the whole goal.
Yeah.
And I thought that movie just, I can't, it just was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's what actually leads into my number 3, which is I feel like the best filmmaker's film of the MCU. My number 3 goes to Winter Soldier. I think this one is by far like the most cinematically pleasing when it comes to practical effects and to the storyline, the dynamic between a friend who might not necessarily be that person they once were, and all of the different dynamic between, you know, Captain America and Bucky. So I just love it for that reason. The dialogue is just absolutely amazing. You feel that connection that they had and that friendship that Cap is continuing to fight for. It's just such a beautiful thing. And then plus, I think it was Winter Soldier where it's not the elevator scene, but it's the helicopter scene where he's literally pulling back the helicopter. That man was fucking jacked, dog. Like, it was crazy. Like, that, I thought that was like just an epic kind of thing. So that's why at number 3 I have Winter Soldier, Captain America.
There you go. My number 3, Endgame. It's the in my opinion, the definitive group superhero movie. Saga movie that had everything from start to finish. It got every single Marvel character right. Every single thing that every comic book geek wanted, everything that didn't have a fucking clue about comic books wanted, and every filmmaker wanted. They can say all they want to, all of them. Scorsese, all of them. This movie had everything a fucking filmmaker wanted. It had heart. It had story. It had acting. It had production value. It had everything that a filmmaker looks to do with a film, this movie had. And in my opinion, honestly, one of, if not the greatest scene ever put on film. When that hammer comes flying into his hand and he says, "Avengers Assemble," I mean, that's one of the most cinematic masterpiece scenes ever put on film. I would line that up with the Citizen Kanes and the fucking Gone with the Winds and that movie and the crowd. Like, I don't give a fuck what theater you were in. Every crowd's like, "Fuck yeah!" And that was the payoff from Ultron and the amount of respect. Again, the only movies that get Thor right. That is a god who knew this man is worthy of my hammer. Even more so why the fucking ridiculous love story shit in fucking Love and Thunder. This is a man who knew what the hammer meant. And this man was worthy to wield it. And that culmination of the respect between them, just like everything about that scene was just fucking like amazing.
So
it was
good.
Fucking amazing. The call out to "On Your Left" when Sam comes flying
so
through.
Oh my
right?
God.
We're not done yet. On your left, here come the whole rest of
good.
it. Like, so fucking good. I mean, whoo,
Yeah,
that movie,
it gets you
man.
pumped up. It makes you want to
I
watch it.
do want to fucking watch it again. I go and watch. I'm not even going to lie. Marvel released the clip of the crowd reacting. I go watch that sometimes.
I would
just
too.
fucking love. That's why everybody says, "Why do you always go see it in the theater? Why on opening night? Why on opening night?" Because that shit happens on opening night, not
Exactly.
after it's spoiled. That shit only happens at Comic-Con in Hall H or at opening night in the theaters.
Exactly.
And so that's why I'm going, no matter what my feelings are towards Ezra. I'm going because I know definitively when Keaton shows up, I'm going to get that type reaction in my theater, and I can't wait for that shit.
I love it.
So
I love it.
Avengers Endgame, my number 3.
Number 2 for me goes to Captain America Civil War.
Yes.
This dynamic was completely different, like Infinity War. We had never seen anything like this before, where the good guys are fighting against each other. Not just one or two good guys, but all of the good guys are fighting against each other, fighting for what is right, and that is what society is. We have differing opinions about different things. We all want the best possible outcome, but we just approach it differently, and I just felt like this movie represented society in such a beautiful way. But it was just, of course it's geared more towards one side, but I felt like they did a really good job about it not being biased. I mean, you really had to pick a side. Which one were you on? Were you Team Cap or were you Team Iron Man? So it was a very interesting dynamic what they did, and then plus introducing Spider-Man, because that was the first time we saw Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and just again, everybody fighting against each other, and that sets up the next phase of what the MCU was. And I just felt like that time era between I want to say 2012 when first Avengers came out to probably right after Endgame, that stretch of 8 years, they were putting out hit after hit, flawless movies in my opinion. So absolutely loved every single one of them. But yeah, number 2 for Civil War, just because it's so damn good. I mean, there's nothing else you can really say. It's just a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece.
No, it's my number 2 also. And for all those reasons, I do like how it was a photo of society.
It is.
It was literally a true representation of where we're at in society and still at in society, with the split down the middle, with both sides thinking they're right and both sides having valid points, even when they're doing something you don't necessarily agree with. Because you could feel for both Cap and Iron Man. They were both right in what they were trying to achieve. You can't be both. Yeah. So, and then also the understanding at the end of getting that. Listen, we're never going to agree on this, but we can agree to not agree and still be together. And even though that rift took a little bit, you can see that start to play out at the end of this movie. And it had to be on my list of a 1 or 2 because it is the introduction of Spider-Man, and it's the first time ever that you see Spider-Man done right, because it's the first time you ever see on screen, and this has nothing to do with any of the other costume designers. Kudos. I thought all of the Spider-Man costumes were pretty fucking badass. But this is the first time you ever fucking see the comic book come to life, where his eyes fucking move. Holy shit. Like all the other costumes, all the other Spider-Mans, his eyes never moved. It was just a mask. But in the comic books, you see when he gets excited, the eyes go up. When he gets mad, they squint. And you're like, and now we finally fucking have it. The emotion with the eyes moving. I was like, yes! Holy shit, we've got fucking Spider-Man! Like, it was so good. As a comic book geek, you're like, there he is! There's fucking Spider-Man. Oh, it was so good. It was so fucking good. So yeah, my number 2, Civil War, man.
I love it. I love it. Now, number 1 for me, after 32 movies, woo! My number 1 goes out to Spider-Man No Way Home. I say that because, as I've said previously, Spider-Man is now my favorite MCU character. And I just feel like what this movie did, it brought back my childhood. I am all about connecting to different things and how it makes you feel, and I'm a very emotional person. And so to be able to bring back Tobey Maguire, because that was the first ever superhero movie I had seen in theaters, being my age. Like, the original Spider-Man, that was like the pinnacle. Like, that was absolutely amazing. The first and second one were just so freaking great and did amazing at the box office. Like, first time ever breaking $100 million for an opening weekend domestically.
Yep.
That is absolutely crazy. So to bring that back, and even to bring back Andrew Garfield, which a lot of people hated on, and to have that whole dynamic of all of them actually talking to each other. And I really have to credit Spider-Man Into the Spider-Universe, the animated one, for giving Marvel the opportunity to even think about this idea, because before that, I don't think that would have even have been a thing. But I felt like it was a very emotional movie. It was in-game level-esque when they come through the portal where you finally see these Spider-Men come back and just create such an atmosphere to where you are reminiscent of your childhood. You are reminiscent of what it was like, 5, 6, 7 years ago when Andrew Garfield's came out, and the dynamic between the love interests. Andrew Garfield's love interest died, and how that impacted his character and how Tom Holland approached the way he was going to do things. So it's all of these different things. And it was just an utterly beautiful shot film. That scene where Tom Holland is sitting down in the rain and it's the LED sign, like poster, and it's just flickering back and forth, and that's in the rain. It just looks so damn beautiful. Literally nothing was being said, but that shot made me cry, because that's how much I love filmmaking and how much I love color tones and that different things. But that's why, as you can tell, this film makes me feel some type of way, and so that's why I had to put it at my number 1, Spider-Man No Way Home.
There you go.
So
it's hard to argue any of that. It's a fucking brilliant film, and we finally see Spider-Man come into who he is at the very end of it. I'm going to make my suit again. It's going to be this, and I'm not going to have to rely on anybody but me.
Yeah.
And I love that. And the redemption aspect of when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man saves MJ, that redemption of not being able to save Gwen, but saving MJ. And so that was brilliant, and just like,
so good.
Really good. My number 1 is my number 1 for a couple of different reasons. My number 1 is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And the reason it's my number 1, the reason that I think it is definitively the best Marvel movie ever made, is for a couple of reasons. One, because of all the knocking of all the superhero film, superhero genre. It's not this, it's not that, it is this, it is that. I think definitively this film took a superhero and made it a non-superhero film. This was just a film. This was a political spy thriller. That's what this was. It was a drama. It was story driven. It just happened to have a superhero in it.
Yep.
That's what it was. So I think this was a definitive slap back to all the critics of superhero movies saying they're not real films, they're not real stories, they're over-the-top sci-fi, whatever, fantasy. The Russo brothers said, no, sir. This is a real movie with a real story with real characters and real consequences, and we can prove to you that that's what these are. And I think it definitively did that. And I think most people will agree with that. Even the people that want to fucking hate superhero movies will say this film was a film, not a superhero movie. It was a film, and it was a fucking great film. The other reason why I love this story, beyond the redemption factor of Bucky and the never giving up on a friend, loyal to the end kind of storyline, right, is I also feel like this movie definitively defines America. Captain America. This is a man who unwavers from his stance on what he believes America stands for. In the face of all of the corruption, in the face of all the bad stuff that is coming out and how twisted sometimes America can be, all that, Steve Rogers says, we are that fucking city on a hill, the shining city on a hill, the one that everybody aspires to be like, the freedom that everybody wants, and I will not waver in what I stand for or what I believe is to be true. That is the America we all want to live in. That is the America everybody needs across the world, and this movie nails that. So you get from a filmmaking standpoint, it's a brilliant film. From an American standpoint, it's fucking Americana at its absolute best. And it's also a superhero movie.
It's also a superhero movie.
That kicks ass. It has a lot of cool shit in it. Like, the elevator fucking scene is badass. But that's why it's number 1 for me. You guys know I'm a political junkie. I'm an Americana. I'm a all in on that. I'm a superhero geek from start to finish, have been my whole life. And I'm a filmmaker. And this movie for me nailed all fucking three. So
Yeah.
it had to be number one for me. It had to be.
That's so funny, man. It was very difficult to try to do this.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It took me over an hour to put all this together.
And it could have been interchanging. I could have just moved them around constantly, like, you know.
It was very difficult, but we want to know your opinions.
Except for the Thors.
Yeah, that one wasn't hard.
Pretty simple.
Those weren't difficult. We want to know, what is your favorite MCU movies? Give us a top 5 if you want. If you want to do the whole 32, be sure to email us at info@crazyantmedia.